Welcome to today's webinar, How to Engage, Not Enrage when Talking about Islamophobia. We'd love to hear your questions and comments during the broadcast or afterwards in the chat. So feel free. Our communications analyst, Carly Goodman, is going to be moderating the comment section. So feel free to post something in the Facebook comments here and we'll try to get to it at the end. And if you like what you hear today, then I invite you to follow us on Facebook or on Twitter at AFSC_org to get a little more information. And you'll also be able to find a video of today's broadcast available here on Facebook in the video archive or on our website, afsc.org. And before we get started, let me introduce myself. My name is Beth Hallowell. I'm the Communications Research Director here at AFSC. And AFSC, for those who are new to us, stands for American Friends Service Committee. I'm coming to you from Philadelphia, and as I mentioned earlier, feel free to give us a shout out in the comments and let us know where you're coming from. So this time of year, there are tons of resources out there on how to talk to your conservative loved ones about the issues that matter. Today, we're going to talk about how sometimes our more moderate and even our really progressive friends and family get it wrong when talking about Islamophobia, and what you can do about it too. If you've attended a training with our Communities Against Islamophobia staff, or even if you haven't, you probably know that engaging our loved ones on important issues like Islamophobia is part of our work as activists and advocates. But some ways of engaging are better than others. And what I mean by that is that some of the ways of speaking out are more likely to engage your listeners and even motivate them to take action with you, rather than shutting them down. Earlier this year, the American Friends Service Committee did a study that showed how some ways of talking about Islamophobia can help build support for ending this terrible form of discrimination, while other ways of talking about it actually turn people off or dissuaded them from taking action at all. Needless to say, it's important to make sure that the way you talk about this issue is going to motivate people rather than turn them off. So today I'm going to talk about two ways to motivate two groups of people in particular. And these are things that we learned about through our study. What we're going to share are what we call some opening lines, things to get you started, on these conversations. And that's also, by the way, the name of our study, Opening Lines. So first I'm going to talk about how to talk to your progressive friends or family members. Maybe you have a progressive cousin who is already engaged on this issue, but the way she talks about it always turns everyone else off. Second, I'm going to talk about how to talk to your more moderate friends and family members. Maybe you have a moderate uncle who agrees with you on some things, but not others. Maybe he's not an activist right now, but you think you can reach him. You think he might be interested in taking action with you. Now, before we talk a little bit about specifics, I just want to say up front that these are recommendations that are meant for allies talking to other potential allies. That's what our study was investigating. How can allies help create more allies? If you're Muslim, a member of an affected community, or your friends and family are Muslim, or from an affected community, your perspective might be different, and what works or what doesn't is probably going to be different too. So again, just to clarify, when I'm talking today, we're thinking about allies helping to create more allies and talking to more allies as well. So let's start with our first set of opening lines. What to say when you're talking with other progressives. Imagine you're sitting around the dinner table with your family. You've got a cousin who's very progressive, and when Trump's Muslim ban comes up, she starts talking about how US policies like the Muslim ban fuel extremism and hatred. You can see that others around the table are starting to look nervous. Maybe even they're rolling their eyes. You might agree with her point of view, but you can see that she's turning people off. So what do? Our research shows that if you're a progressive talking to other progressives, like your cousin, you want to lead with something about respecting human rights. Your progressive cousin is well-intentioned, and you know that, but you can also see that she's turning others away. So to engage her, start by asking a few questions and listening to her perspective. So chances are that she'll be on board with the idea of respecting human rights. She's progressive after all. And that's your opening for a line such as, respecting human rights is an essential, universal value. We all benefit when we uphold the dignity and worth of all people. That's why we should oppose the Muslim ban. Easy, right? It can actually be really hard, but we'll talk about how to get started at the end. So that line about respecting human rights is how to help open up a conversation with your well-meaning progressive cousin who's inadvertently shutting everyone else down. Now let's talk about your more moderate uncle. Imagine you're at your dinner table, but instead of your cousin sounding off on the Muslim ban, it's your more moderate uncle who just mentions it as something he heard about on the news. He's all for inclusive communities that welcome people, but he's also worried about terrorism. He admits that these days he's been feeling pretty unsafe. So what do? Our research shows that if you're talking to more moderate folks like your uncle, you want to lead with something about safety and peace. Your moderate uncle is well-intentioned, and you know that, but you can also see that he's leaning towards a terrible policy because of his own fear. So again, you want to start by asking a few questions and listening to his point of view. Chances are that he'll be on board with the idea that everyone deserves to feel safe in their own communities. And that's your opening for a line such as, all of us deserve to feel safe from hatred and to live and pray in peace. A similar idea that our study showed might work, especially for people in our study who identified themselves as people of color, was the idea that we all sink or swim together. So you could talk about how, quote, safety and security are created by neighbors and communities working together. We need to ensure that no one is isolated because we all sink or swim together. Got it? Just kidding, this stuff is really hard. So next I'm going to talk about a few do's and don'ts that will help you get started. Before I move on though, I just want to let you all know, for folks who are just tuning in, my name is Beth Hallowell. I'm the Communications Research Director here at AFSC, the American Friends Service Committee. And we're talking about how you as an ally can talk about Islamophobia in a way that helps to build support for taking action on this particular issue. So now let's go back to some of the do's, a few things to help you get started. Do talk about human rights and respect for human rights if you're talking with your progressive friends and family members. Like I said before, they're progressive after all. Do talk about safety and peace if your friends and family are more politically moderate. And if you need another go-to phrase, talk about how safety and security come from working together, that we all sink or swim together. That was another opening line that our study showed could work. Now let's talk about a few don'ts. These are a few things to avoid because, as I mentioned earlier, our research shows that some things will dissuade even your most progressive friends and family members from taking action, let alone your more moderate friends and family. So with that in mind, don't talk about how US policies fuel extremism or about how US policies sow the seeds of hate. This shuts people down even if they agree with you. Second, don't myth bust. That means that when you hear someone saying something like, That's wrong, don't indulge them. Jump over what they're saying to the opening lines that you know are going to work, like human rights for your progressive audiences and safety and peace for your more moderate audience. A few caveats. Anytime you're having one of these conversations, you always need to consider your own identity and your own positionality, as well as that of the person who's listening to you, whether that's your cousin, your uncle, or somebody else. And you always you need to use your best judgment of the situation. If it's not safe, don't go there. So now that we've talked through some opening lines and a few do's and don'ts to help you get started, let's talk about what you can do next. The first thing you can do is visit afsc.org, where we have resources like 5 things you can do to counter Islamophobia. If you haven't already attended a training with our Communities Against Islamophobia staff, check with your local AFSC office to see if one's being offered near you. And if you can't make a training or there isn't one in your area, we have shareable resources from all our trainings also available at afsc.org. We also offer virtual trainings on related issues, like how to intervene when you're a bystander and you see something racist or Islamophobic happening on the street. You can sign up for our bystander intervention at our website as well. And our chat moderator, Carly Goodman, is going to be posting these links in the comments. You can always follow us on social media, like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter, to get up-to-date information on resources, as well as new tips about how to talk about these issues and to share your own story. Which leads me to my last step. These ideas are what we think will work based on our research, but only you can test them out to find out if they actually do work. So if you're celebrating whatever you celebrate this holiday season, and you find yourself trying to get to that progressive cousin or moderate uncle to help them get out of their own frames and to bring them along with you, let us know how it went. Tell us about it on Facebook or tag us on Twitter. We're also going to be posting this video to afsc.org. And like I said before, it'll all automatically be available in our Facebook video archive. So you can tell us how things went in the comments, either on afsc.org or here on Facebook as well. So that's what we have today. Any questions? You know, I know one question that comes up a lot is, how do I engage my more conservative friends and family members? And why aren't we focusing on getting those people over to our side or helping them turn into allies? And the thing I like to share about that is that I always recommend that we start where we're at, right? You want to start with the people who already agree with you, or at least may agree with you and are movable. The more we can build out our base of support, the stronger our message will be, because there will simply be more people to help amplify it. And so that's the reason we decided in our study to focus on progressives and moderates in particular, to see what would work with them so we can help build our base of support while we're doing this important work. And thanks again to Carly Goodman for all of her awesome moderating work today, posting and so forth in the comments. Oh, so we have a comment about how we conducted this study. So this study was conducted in 2 phases. The first phase was what we call qualitative. That means we asked a small group of people a lot of open-ended questions about their values, about messages they'd heard around surveillance and profiling of Muslims, what they thought about that issue, and so forth. And in that part of our study, we tried to connect with a very diverse group of people, with not most of whom were Muslim, but with more Muslim respondents than others. And then from there, we took that feedback about what people had heard, what they thought would be effective, what would be effective for them, what they thought would be effective for their friends and family. And then we tested it with a larger online panel that was more representative of the United States demographically. And from there, we found exactly what I just shared with you, that we've got two clear winners that are going to win with opening lines that would be most effective with progressives, and an opening line that would be more effective with political moderates. We have a question about myth busting. That's a really good one. And I have to give a shout out to our friends at the Opportunity Agenda. You should find them on Facebook and Twitter when this is over as well. This research actually, that recommendation comes from research they've conducted. Myth busting is when someone says something that you know isn't true and you repeat what they basically just said. So if someone says, profiling is necessary to keep us all safe, if you say back, profiling isn't necessary and here's why, that's myth busting. And while that's a common and very understandable knee-jerk reaction, it's really important not to do that, because what you've just done is repeat the lie. And the Opportunity Agenda's research shows that your listener, people who are around you, and the person that you're talking to, they won't hear what comes next in your sentence. All they've heard is a lie 2 times. And that is the last thing we want. So anytime you hear someone sharing something that you know is factually inaccurate, you can correct them, but do it by jumping over what they just said. Do not indulge them. Don't do it. Otherwise, you're just helping to spread the myth inadvertently by, again, repeating what someone said, even if it's with the best of intentions. Your listeners, they won't hear that. All they'll hear is that lie 2 times. That's a great question. Another common question that comes up when I'm talking about this research or about some of our messaging recommendations is, what do you do if you feel stuck or you have some kind of emotional reaction? And I think that's sort of goes back to what we were saying earlier about you're the own best judge of who you are and what the situation is and what's going to work in the situation and so forth. And so you really need to, sort of exercise your own best judgment. And that's really hard. I should also emphasize that this is not easy and takes a lot of practice. Even here at AFSC, where we have people who are really seasoned staff members, organizers, trainers of trainers, and activists and so forth, they practice. They try and they try again, and they try things that don't work, and they tweak it and they move on. So I really want to emphasize that this is a learning curve for everyone, including myself. I've gotten some really amazing help from some of my colleagues here to get better about things like don't myth bust. It's really hard because a lot of this stuff doesn't come naturally to most people. And so I really want to emphasize that you can practice. And if you don't get it right the first time, the important thing is to learn and try again. Oh, so a question about, does research show that these kinds of discussions at the dinner table are effective at moving people to action? Yeah, that's exactly what our research shows. Our research shows that these messages are the kinds of messages that are going to set people up to take action with you. Maybe not at the actual dinner table or anything like that, but over time. And that's, again, what we're aiming for, is building a broad base of support for our advocacy, for our activism over time. And so you got to use them over and over and over again. That's another important thing to remember. One opening line does not a convert make, right? If somebody's on the bubble, or even if somebody's, with you in spirit, but they're just accustomed to talking in a particular way, you got to keep at it, right? They need to hear your message and hear your sort of opening line over and over and over again. And then as you've gotten them accustomed to hearing that, bringing them along with different actions or asks, some of which you can find at afsc.org if you're looking for specific actions that people can take. You can also sign up for our email list. And if you let us know that this is one of your issue areas that you're interested in, that helps us stay in touch with you about, upcoming advocacy asks or, petitions to sign, that sort of thing. But yeah, that is exactly what this research is showing us, is that these kinds of discussions and these kinds of, and these lines in particular, are what are going to help move people forward. That's a great question. One other thing to add about what this research doesn't show is 100% guarantee of anything, right? So like anything else in life is not a guarantee. And that's why we were encouraging as a next step, like give us feedback. Like, did you try this out? What worked? What didn't? What was your experience? We'd really love to hear back from folks who are trying these opening lines out in real life to see what's happening and to see what their experiences are, because research can't guarantee, right? All of this is only going to be, we're only going to know 100% that these are effective if people are testing them, kicking the tires, and then letting us know how it went. We have another question about what kinds of actions are most effective. That's a really great question, and I am not sure. I kind of wish I had one of my colleagues from our trainer group on with us today. We know that direct action, civil resistance, and nonviolent action are most effective over the long haul. That's something that research has shown time and again. And of course, AFSC, for folks who are new to us or don't know us that well, is a peace-building organization, a nonviolent organization. And so those are the kinds of actions that work best over time. And I'm talking about like over decades and decades. It's that nonviolent civil resistance is most effective. We've got some good research to show that as well. I'm also getting a reminder. Yeah, that's a great one. A reminder, can you share this video? Yeah, that's a great next step. So in addition to watching it over again, if you need a little refresher right before you go to Thanksgiving or whatever you're going to celebrate in the next couple of weeks, feel free to not just watch this again in our video archive or on our website, afsc.org, but feel free to also share the video with family and friends. You know, even just tag them here in the comments. Right on Facebook so that they can find it later. You can also feel free to share any of the links that Carly's been posting. Those pages are routinely updated with new content that's coming out of our trainings, new findings, or additional findings from our new study, that sort of thing. So it's a great way to help build up our base of support is to share some resources. And like I said, if you sign up for our email address, that helps us stay in touch with you. Or excuse me, sign up for our email list, that helps us stay in touch with you so that we can send you advocacy actions or petitions when they come along. All right, well, we're nearing the end of our time today, and I'm really excited that you were all able to join us. Thank you so much for spending a part of your afternoon. If you haven't told us where you're dialing in from or you have one last question, feel free to chat it now in the comments. We'll always be able to follow up later too. And I should give a special thank you to my producers here at AFSC. They've done an amazing job helping me get this video together for you all today. All right, well, don't forget to share this video. Don't forget to tell us how your opening line went next week after you've gone to Thanksgiving or over the next couple of weeks after you've gone to your holiday table. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk later. Bye, everyone.